Hey everybody, Mr. Kroll here from HEHS, and today we are going to be showing you all an R&R for a battery, okay? And just in case you forgot, R&R stands for remove and replace. All right, so there's a couple of reasons you might be doing this. Maybe we've figured out this car, we did some testing and realized the battery's starting to fail, all right? So maybe we're just going to put a new battery in. Maybe in certain instances we might need to access something. We might need to get behind or underneath this battery, so we need to get the battery out of the car to access other components. Or in this case, if Mr. Ligman wants to come in close, you can see the reason we're going to be pulling this battery is that it has some severe dirtiness, and that can cause problems like surface discharge, which we'll talk about more later. But right now we're going to focus on removing this battery. Okay? Tools for this are very basic, guys. We got just a couple of things here we're going to use. We've got a little socket set and just some PB blaster in case there's any rusty stuff. But this is going to be our main focus here. Okay? I went ahead and checked this beforehand, and pretty much everything here is going to be simple. We're going to be using a 10mm socket, and then we're also using our small 1/4" drive ratchet. Okay, we got different sizes. We have a 3/8 or a 1/2 inch, but we don't want to go too crazy because we're dealing with small items here. All right, so the first thing we want to do here, everyone, before we get started is make sure everything's cleared out of our way. We got our hood propped, and the first step to removing your battery is we're going to disconnect the negative cable. Okay, the reason we want to do the negative cable first is it's going to be the least sketchy, if that makes sense, okay? Because the whole metal part of our car is the negative or our ground, if we were to start with the positive, our red here, if we were to accidentally touch the positive and the metal at the same time, it's more likely to spark or allow electricity to flow. That's also the reason they have lots of times have a cover over the positive side. So we're gonna start with the negative side here first. Okay, got my 10mm and a ratchet, and we have just a small nut on here that's holding a clamp squeezing around that post. Okay, so Mr. Ligman, if you want, you can come in close here maybe, and we can kind of see up close here. So we're lefty-loosey, and we're just going to loosen this up. We don't have to take this nut off completely, just enough so that we can loosen, and we're going to wiggle off, and you see there is our connection, right, to our battery post. Now, if I leave this dangling, there's a chance it can keep touching, and that can cause sparks. So we're going to tuck this cable down and away off to the side. All right. One more safety thing, friends, we want to be careful of is we want to make sure that we don't ever let the positive and negative touch with any metal tools. Okay. If I use my hands and touch those, no problem, right? Because I have lots of resistance in my hands and my rubber gloves. But if I had a long enough metal tool, we don't want to let that touch both sides. Fortunately, you guys can see I've got a baby 1/4 inch. I can't reach to both sides. Okay. Next step here, I got my cover opened. We're going to loosen the nut for the positive side. And again, I'm not going to let this touch to the metal on the car. A couple turns, just enough. Oops, my socket popped off there. Just enough so we can wiggle this. And we're going to pull this free. Again, we'll tuck this kind of down and off to the side. All right, so we have our cables disconnected, but you can see here, friends, the battery is not going anywhere, okay? Every car has some method or means that's gonna hold that battery in place, all right? We don't want this thing jumping or bouncing when we're driving. So you can see on this car, we have a bracket going right across the top of the battery, and on the back side, there's a hook that's holding down to a bottom container. So what we're going to do here is I'm actually going to loosen my cable here and get this out of the way. This just has a little plastic hold down that's holding the cable, and that's also connected to my hold down there. So I'm going to pick that out of the way and get that off. Okay, I'm going to start, we're just going to loosen these, and this might be a spot where your PB blaster comes in handy. You'll notice we have some rust on these. So if you're having trouble getting these loose, you can let this soak and even leave this on here for a little while, a half an hour, and come back and check them later. But you guys can kind of get the idea there. A little bit of that to soak and get some of the rust. Okay, so I'm going to start, we'll loosen this outer one here, and it's the same size at 10 millimeter. So I'm just going to give that a little turn and get that loosening. Okay, it's getting a little bit easier as we go, which is a good sign. All right, now before I take this one all the way off, we want to loosen this back one. All right, now friends, there is a problem here. You can see that this is a nut and it has a long threaded shaft sticking up out of the top. My regular socket will not fit down far enough. Okay, so I'm gonna need to swap my 10 millimeter and I'm gonna grab a deep 10 millimeter socket. Okay, same size, just a little bit deeper of a reach. So now we can fit this on here, and that just reaches down there. So we're gonna turn this here. Just a few turns to get this loose. And we want to loosen this before we take the front off, otherwise this front bracket is going to try to spin around while we're working. Okay, we'll get this front one the rest of the way out. All right, there we go. Put this, this bolt somewhere safe so it doesn't get lost. And now you can see here, friends, we can swing this bracket out of the way. And in the rear, we have a metal hook that is connected to the bottom, and that is our hold down. So we're going to take that, set that out of the way. We also have a little cover around the outside that's protecting the battery. We can slide that off. And finally, last step, be careful here, friends. We got a heavy battery. We're going to pull this out. Make sure you don't lift with your back, right? We don't want to use your back because you can hurt yourself. But we're going to do our best here to get a good grip. Okay. And there we have it. There's our battery removed from the car. All right, everybody. We're going to go through the second half of our R&R. That's remove, and now we're going to replace the battery. Okay, so for whatever reason, maybe we had to put a brand new battery in. Maybe we got to whatever parts we needed to behind that battery, and now we're just going to reinstall it. Or in this example, you guys can actually see here, this battery was just recently cleaned. So we got our clean battery. We're going to go ahead and reinstall this. Okay, so in the car itself here, friends, you can see there is a tray in the bottom that the battery needs to sit into. Okay, so we got that tray ready to rock. And again, we're just going to carefully grab this battery and we're going to reinstall this. We don't want to let this thing fall. We're just going to gently lower it into place. All right, make sure our cables don't get stuck in the way. All right, and we're going to make sure these stay kind of tucked down and away. All right, the next step, but we don't want to forget, we had this protective cover over our battery. That's going to help keep a lot of the dirt and moisture from getting all over it. So that's going to go on next here. We're going to go ahead and add this over the top of our battery. Okay, so we're going to get our hold down in here next, friends. And remember, we got this hook here that's holding in the rear. The front is going to bolt right into this brace right by our headlight. Okay, so what I'm going to do here is I'm going to actually feed this down through because I left our nut on the end there, and I'm going to start by feeding this hook down into the rear, and it's going to hook in right by that battery holder. Okay, and now that rear end is basically ready to go. We're going to start tightening this front bolt by hand, all right, to make sure that's threaded in nice and even. Okay, next I'm going to take my ratchet here. We're going to go righty-tighty, and I'm going to go ahead and start to tighten down this bolt. Okay, and this one does not have to be crazy tight. If you were not sure, you could always pull up the torque specification and see exactly how tight this needed to go, but we're just going to go by feel here and get it just snugged down enough that the battery can't move on us. Okay, and then again, I'm going to switch my small 10 millimeter for my large deep well 10 millimeter to get over this back area, and I'm just going to tighten down this rear nut. And as I do this, this is starting to pull down on this battery. Okay, again, we're just going to go until it's snugged up. All right. Now, friends, a good thing to check here, if this hold down is secured, this battery is going to be nice and snug, as you can see there. The battery's not moving or loose. Okay. The next step is to reattach our posts to the battery cables. Okay, so we're going to go in reverse order here. Remember, we took off the negative first and then the positive. We're going to go the reverse, so we're going to start by putting the positive on. I'm going to go ahead and grab my ratchet so I'm ready to roll. Okay, we're going to start, we're going to lay the positive on, and this little clip goes into place as well. All right, now for this one, friends, you're not going to find a torque spec, but here's the general rule. If I can still wiggle this and move the outside, that means it's not tight enough. Okay, so I'm just going to simply tighten this down just a tad bit at a time until it's snugged up. And when I wiggle this, maybe just a tad bit tighter. And now, friends, you can see that cable does not move at all. That's exactly what we want. Oh my goodness. All right, last but not least, friends, we're going to be reinstalling our negative cable. This one may spark when you reinstall this. Okay, so that one, we're going to go ahead and put that into place. Again, we're going to tighten without touching to our positive side. We're going to make sure we don't touch both ends. And we're going to snug this down a little bit at a time and make sure our cable does not move. All right, friends, that is our completed process. We've got the battery reinstalled. Now, one more thing to make note of, especially on newer cars, your car's memory might be missing right now. So things like your settings for your seats, your radio stations, they might be changed. You might need to reset some of those items. But ladies and gentlemen, that's our complete process, our R&R, remove and replace for your battery. Thanks for watching.